Well, welcome today to Live. I'm excited to have Chris and Jamie from Expedition Marriage. Thank you guys for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having us. It's
Yeah,
our
thank
pleasure.
you.
Really, this is
Well,
great.
you guys are great. You've been married 27 years, Christian and marriage coaches, and you help couples face challenges in marriage. And I just love watching you guys. You have so much fun. Just this week before we went live, just you guys just kind of light up a room when you come into it. And so it's good to be able to be face to face live with you guys. We've collaborated on some things, and we'll continue to do some of that. But I'm excited to have you guys live. So we want to talk today about triggers in marriage. So what are some of the common triggers that you guys see in marriage?
Ooh, there's a lot. I mean, I could give you a whole list just from our marriage from early on.
For what we see in us or see as we meet with couples.
Yeah, exactly. Probably some commonality.
Yes, I think so. I think some of the simpler ones, is maybe a spouse being late. If somebody's running late from work, a raised voice. That can be a trigger.
Yelling.
Yes, and it doesn't even have to be that much. And a big one for me is if I'm talking and all of a sudden he turns his back or he looks away. It's an instant trigger. And I know for him, like the car would be a place of triggers for you to show up, wouldn't it? Like with driving.
Yeah. Oh, the turn's coming up here. I know the turn's coming up. I know how to drive.
I have that same thing. In fact, Nikki said the other day, she said, that's the one thing I'm still working on. Come on, God.
Well, the follow-up triggered question to that is, I knew you were going to pass that turn.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me?
Yeah, exactly. Because you told me not to tell you what to do. Oh my gosh, you guys are just a mirror image of us in the car. I like what you said, Jamie, about late, because I think it seems like very few couples define being on time the same. And so, sometimes one wants to be early and the other doesn't care if they're a few minutes late. And then, or if they're not early, like coming home and you said you're going to be home at 6 and now you're home at 7 and I haven't heard from you. So how do we fix that?
Yeah, I mean, because, like you just mentioned a couple reasons why that could be a trigger. And so it's not a, one situation that could do it. If a spouse is late from home, it could be received as they don't care about me. They don't care that I've made dinner. They're not valuing me. Or it could be, who are they seeing? It's like they're all of a sudden having an affair, or it could be they're, in an accident.
Yeah. They're in a ditch in the side of the road. That's why they're called, because they're, their phone's cracked. And
we can, like, how we receive things, the filters we receive things through in life are so different. And I think how we deal with them is we have to get good at acknowledging and learning, identifying where triggers are. And know when you have, because triggers normally trigger, kind of an irrational reaction.
Well,
I mean, it's usually irrational. It's usually, and by that, I mean, it's usually pretty extreme. You're 5 minutes late, so you're having an affair.
Yeah, stronger.
You went from 0 to 60.
Absolutely. And I think it's more, I've had a few couples that actually got married after having an affair with each other. And boy, there are all kinds of triggers there. It's because they remember, well, that's what we did. And, they weren't there. And so I think there just can be all over the place. And a lot of those that you mentioned, I think we could take care of them. We can say, just call, communicate, send a text. Right? Do some things to just let them know that you're okay. And then if the extreme happens where you actually can't because you are in a ditch somewhere, then that's a different situation. But probably most of them can be solved with just improved communication.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And you need to, sorry, baby, you need to like identify what's happening, because your spouse can offer that when they know what's going on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what they hear is a lot of accusations about you being untrustworthy and you're having an affair. Most people will become defensive.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That impugns my character. I can't believe you even have thought of that.
Right. No. Versus, you know what? I come from a history where my mom left my dad, or my dad cheated on my mom, or my ex-spouse cheated on me. So it just triggers me and I get worried. So can you please, if you're going to be late, that's a big deal to me. Can you please call?
Well, and that's sort of one thing I was getting ready to say, is because the challenge is right. We were talking about that. It tends to elicit this response that's bigger than just, hey, can you pass me the salt?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
So because when we're triggered, or we get emotionally reactive, and that knee jerk, that reaction, I'm gesturing off camera, that reaction, it tends to be a trigger for our spouse, and then they react, which tends to be a trigger for us. Then you can almost hear the Calliope music going, right?
Yeah, there you go. You're just over and over and over. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's a lot of what I hear you guys saying too is we got to take time to understand our spouse and to value that, because if Nancy tells me something that is a trigger for her, and I go, well, that's stupid. Well, that hadn't helped either one. In fact, it's hurt us when we do something like that. So I think sometimes just taking the time to say, okay, I don't get this, of why that bothers you as a trigger, but I'm going to do my best to help you with this. Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's one of the things we tell couples all the time is we've got to become a PhD in our spouse's woundedness.
I love that.
We have to know, what happened in their upbringing, because you can develop these triggers, from your upbringing, something you've witnessed in your parents, something a parent has done to you, something a middle school bully has said, and even things that, you've taken way out of context that have hurt you, that kind of could be somewhat normal, but how they affected you can create a trigger because they come from where you've been wounded.
Yeah.
And the more we know about each other's wounds, the more we seek to understand, the filter our spouses are looking through life with, the more we're going to be able to help them, because that's part of the deal too, is, God is our biggest resource in our marriages, but next in line, like, this guy's my biggest resource. And I'm his. And I think we often forget that. And instead, I'll spend time reacting and defending myself against something that he was triggered by, instead of identifying the trigger and going, okay, that's an area where my spouse is insecure or wounded. So let me lean into that and clarify, babe, I would never cheat on you. I was 10 minutes late because my boss called me on the way out the door.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's so good.
Yeah, it's an opportunity. We see it as a sign, as an opportunity to enter in and to be reassuring, or to offer whatever the situation needs, instead of being triggered by it, right? Seeing it as an attack.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned the family of origin and stuff from triggers, and I think a lot of them do come from that. And in other areas that you see triggers come from that you see couples dealing with?
Sure. Prior relationships.
Yeah.
So because like you mentioned, if you get together with the person you cheated on, not only is it, I think, only 11% success rate for those, something like that. Yeah. And, but not to mention, it's fraught with these triggers of, okay, here's damage we know we did, and don't want that to happen to me. And it looks really similar.
Yeah.
Similar. Well, or actually in any place where we get traumatized, whether it's a big T or a little T, it just sometimes even those small little things that continue over and over time that, can create, that place of injury that we go, don't like that. Don't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
How can I make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah. And I think sometimes it can be just improper messages we've heard. And sadly, some of those messages can come from the church.
Yeah.
About what submission is and things like that, and when to stay, when to go. Right, all of that, so we can hear improper messages that all of a sudden you grow up and you get, deeper into your faith and you realize that was wrong. That was wrong. And if you see any inkling of it in your marriage, now you get extra reactive because
it's not going to happen again.
No, I lived with that for a while. I'm not going to keep living with that.
Right.
Instead of sitting down, like you guys are saying, and talking, hey, this is what I was taught growing up, and I realize now how damaging it is. And, just so much of it is communicating, isn't it? And listening to what your spouse is saying and valuing that. Just, okay, you're not doing this just to blow smoke. You're doing this because you want our marriage to work and you want me to underrind you better.
Right.
That's a great point. Yeah, I'm not just bringing up things because I have nothing to talk about. We ran out of stuff to talk about. I'm going to make up for things that this bothers me. This is a place where I want to get better.
Absolutely.
And I want us to be, closer. And when this happens, it pushes me away. It makes me feel more distance, and I don't want that.
Yeah,
I agree. So, what do you do when your spouse triggers you? Because I think, obviously, I think this relates to all of us. I think for over our years of marriage, we found some different triggers and different seasons of marriage. And so what do you do when your spouse triggers you?
Pause.
Yeah.
Well, what do we do? You asked the question, what do we do? We get reactive and, and defensive and triggered and
emotionally elevated and all of that. And once you're emotionally elevated, once you're in that triggered moment, you're not going to get to your resolution because you don't have access to that part of your brain. And so you're so right. Like the first thing is, instead of defending yourself, instead of, reacting or just taking that and running with it, you pause. You pause, and even if you ask, like, I need a few minutes to regroup. I mean, you don't want to send your spouse to timeout and say you need to go calm down.
You
but
could.
you do want to. You do want to
a trigger.
Exactly. That's a trigger in itself.
Yeah.
But you do want to go, you know what? Okay, I felt that physically, that elevation. Step number one is to pause. And then step number two is begin to think about, like, if it's you're the one being triggered, what's happening? What am I really afraid of? What am I thinking he means by what he just did? What does it mean that he's running late? That he was late, or that he, said this thing, and start to ask questions. You want to get curious when a trigger shows up, because it is there with the Lord. Like anything in our marriage, he's going to use it for a purpose. And triggers are purposeful. They are there to teach you and identify, this is an area where you need healing. And I gave you the gift of your spouse to help with that.
I love that.
So,
to bring that to the surface. The way you wanted it. But
That's right. Yeah, because most of us don't know we have triggers till we get in relationships.
But you're saying, look at a trigger as a red flag that something's wrong here.
Yes.
And it's not, and you got to look at yourself first before you look at your spouse.
That's right, because you can't help them understand you if you don't understand yourself.
Absolutely. And I love the pause. I think that is so important. I think that's so hard for us to do. Isn't it? I mean, I think it's really something we've got to, I mean, if we're starting out in, I think we got to ask God to help us in that, because, and I think probably even talking to your spouse about it. Hey, I want to work on these triggers. So I'm going to need to pause. And so don't think I don't love you because I don't fight back right away. I'm really trying to do this better. I'm trying to do this before we move forward. And so, gosh, I just think about, the scripture, James 1:19, quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. There's so much wisdom in that. And the pause is all tied up in that. It's just giving yourself time to think it through, to pray, to say, why is this triggering me? I love when the way you said that, Jamie. You said it beautifully. To just look inside ourselves and take the time to do that. And I think people say, well, I don't want to take time or have time. But, I think when we do that and your marriage is better, you realize that time was well spent.
The return on investment.
I mean, the problem is it requires vulnerability to work through triggers. We love to see it in other people, but we do not like to, engage in ourselves. When we see somebody being vulnerable, I mean, that like connects you to that person. But to, walk in vulnerability, that's difficult. And if you're going to examine a trigger, you have to look and see where you're hurting, because a trigger often will bring up anger. Anger is a lot easier to feel. It feels a lot more powerful and a lot more protective. Vulnerability is almost putting yourself out there for more pain. But that's where, the hope and the healing comes from. That's when it gets purposeful, is when God takes those pains and says, just sit in them for a minute. Let's identify what's really going on. And most of the time you're going to find out he's not my father. He's not the one, my ex-husband who hurt me before. He's not the person who said all those things. And so it's very different when he says the things that are triggering me than what I'm believing that it is. And we have to be vulnerable and be willing to look and identify what's really happening if we want to get the truth, because most of our triggers, what they need is truth.
Yeah, that's so good.
Truth.
That's so good.
Rarely what's happening, or what we think is happening is what's happening. Right. It's what's behind the curtain, so to speak, is what's going on. So we get so caught up dealing with symptoms and symptoms of symptoms, and we don't deal with the issues, because it's just hard to get there. And it just, because when you're talking about James 1:19, it made me think, and I can't remember the reference, but I know it's Proverbs because it talks about being a fool. And
that's like all Proverbs. You're either wise or
Proverbs.
But there is one of the Proverbs is like, that someone who doesn't listen is a fool. And so I think we even had a reel or something where we joked about that. So do you want to be wise? You want to be a fool? It's not us.
God said it.
Yeah, God said it. Don't get mad at us.
I know, exactly. No, that's so good. And I think just taking the time and to look inward, and and I would say to people, if you need help, get a hold of Chris and Jamie, get a hold of a Christian counselor, go to somebody that can help you identify that, because sometimes I think we know there's something there, but it is sometimes hard to pinpoint it ourselves. And so I think putting yourself in front of somebody like you guys, people that deal with that can help you understand yourself, it's worth the time and money, everything that you do in that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, return on investment. Okay. What can we go years and years and be in the same rut and the same pattern and all that? Where can we get some help and, front load it and then go over it? Because I think, I don't know, when you brought that up, I get this image that a lot of people are thinking, oh, great, I'm going to have to sit on the couch and cry about my childhood or something like that. And it's just to give reassurance, it's not like that at all. It's just examining the patterns, examining, okay, what you will keep doing this. All right, let's break that down. Let's look at the patterns. Let's figure out what's the real feelings behind that. What's really, what are you thinking? Because we'll do that with couples. We'll talk about, some of the reactions. We talked about some of the feelings behind that. And then it's like, did you know that they were feeling disconnected? Did you know they're feeling helpless? Nope. No.
If I respond to him, because I'm more of a passionate person, and so like especially back in the day, like I would snap if you trigger me. I'm snapping. I'm a little scrappy, so I will get defensive and I will stand up and fight for myself quickly. And when I do that, if he's triggered me, and because usually on the other side of a trigger is a spouse going, what just happened? I have no idea. A little deer in the headlights. But then here I come at him like a porcupine on steroids. He is not going to receive that and go, oh, she must be feeling insecure.
No.
You porcupine.
Yeah. Exactly.
No. And so we cannot expect our spouse to get what's happening. And just like if he's late for work and I'm like, who did you go see? Where were you at? You
weren't picking up your phone.
Right. He is not going to receive that and say, oh, she must be concerned because her father cheated on her mom. And so she's scared that I might leave her one day. Your spouse is not going to figure that out. So you've got to know.
Not the first thing that comes to mind.
No.
Yeah, right.
You've got to know what's happening so you can talk about these things outside of the triggered moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like have those conversations. Hey, like you were saying, I'm working on this. I've noticed like I'm still dealing with some stuff. I'm scared. Like I trust you, but my biggest fear is that you're going to abandon me one day.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah. And so like when things happen, I'm going to need to step away. It's not personal. Or if I snap at you, please just give me a moment. And because that's what I had to tell him. Like, you need to get okay. You need to get comfortable with me being upset. One, because I need the freedom to be able to be upset if I am, because he would instantly become a people pleaser.
Oh, let's fix this.
Yeah, because me being upset would be a trigger for him that would make him, boom, instantly people please, walk on eggshells. And so us communicating through that was like, you need to be okay if I get mad or I get upset. I am a big girl. I will work through it. We will, it will all be okay. Because I can't have him running away, and he also can't have me exploding all the time. So we need to know, he'll likely run and I'll likely explode.
Yeah.
And we need to know this way outside of the situation. We've talked about it. So when it happens again, we already know, okay, this is what's happening, and we can calm down a little quicker.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's just taking time to work on it. Really.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love the way you talked about just explaining that to Chris so he knows what's going on and that he knows that you're working on something. And then our role is to come alongside our spouse. What do I need to help? How do I do this? Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And then you're being a team.
Yeah, absolutely. How can I be a resource? How can I meet a need for what the situation calls for? And instead of just doing what I think is needed, even if I'm trying to meet a need, it might be what I think is needed versus what they need.
Yeah, because you would hurry up and try to calm me down.
Right. Oh, yeah. Here, how can I help you calm down quickly?
Yeah, let me dismiss this and tell you why it's not a big deal. Why what you're upset about is dumb and foolish, and you don't need to be upset about that.
Versus finding out, okay, what it is that she needs. Validation. She needed to be
reassurance.
To, to needed that hug, even though that she seemed like, looked to me like a big porcupine, she still needed me to lean in and hug.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though she was stiff as a board, it's like that really it was. And I think that's you learning how to come alongside her in those, what does work.
Yeah.
She's saying, don't touch me, but then that when you do, that helps, and so I love that. So how do these triggers help us then in our marriage? Can they help us? Can they help us actually grow our marriage?
Yeah, sure. It's needed. We sometimes refer to, we have, because enjoy the journey. So we have, different references, like, travel references, like rumble strips. And, so if you think about on the road, there's the rumble strips. If you start to get out of the lane, then you start, so you're getting out of the lane, you're getting ready to head for the ditch. Unfortunately, too many of us take those personally or don't acknowledge them, and
we call them grumble strips. In marriage, they're grumble strips.
And so then it's really, if we start to see this as a sign, hey, we need to adjust. We need to do something to get back in the lane. And here's places that we probably hadn't shared with each other. Maybe we weren't even overly aware ourselves, that are now coming to light. So now how can we bring these, because look, nothing good grows in the dark. So how can we bring these to the light? How can we help, to usher in healing and be a resource to each other and support each other through that healing? Well, if we're not, aware of it, if we're not dealing with it, if we're always just keeping it pressed down, it's still going to keep, it's good. Our lights, we're having light problems. It's just
nothing good grows in the dark.
Was that a trigger for either one of you? The light?
But it's going to keep recurring, right? So if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Absolutely.
So we have to make a conscious decision to work on it. But and Jamie, you mentioned this. As we get vulnerable, as we explore, that gives us a chance to, have a knitting of the souls. We grow closer to one another. And once we have these discussions, we feel closer. We feel stronger. We feel like, wow, we know more about each other. You know more about me, and you still love me. I know more about you, and I still love you. And then we love each other even more because of it.
Yeah, I mean, because triggers allow our relationship to be tested. And to be tried and to come out like, trusting in the Lord can be so easy when he's shown up for you so faithfully in the past. And that's what triggers do. When you have these triggers and you work your way through them and you come out the other side and you're now a resource. Now, when hard things come up, I already know, our marriage can handle this. It's been tested.
You get confident, don't you? You gain confidence. And I think that's when a couple figures out they can problem solve together.
Yes.
That's huge. And it's like a gift to your marriage.
Yeah. And you're never going to figure that out if you never have problems.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, because we tell couples, all the time, it's not the problems that will destroy your marriage. It's how you choose to handle them.
Absolutely.
And so you can look at these triggers and any problem in your marriage as the rumble strips that are simply there to go, hey, you're getting off the road, come back on. Or you can complain that these rumble strips are there, rumble strips, and just drive on them and have a bumpy marriage the whole time. Or you can ignore them and just crash. We get to choose how we handle our triggers.
So good.
And that's what's most important. And when you handle them well, your marriage is so much stronger because it's been tested and the love has been proven. And it's, I'm here with you as a resource to love you and to support you. And no matter what comes, we're in it together.
Yeah.
And I hope this encourages people to take that step. A couple of people came to my mind that I've worked with in the past that have trigger problems. And I said, well, when did these start? And they'll say 10 years ago. And I'm thinking, if you're listening today and you've got triggers, and it's probably going to be almost everybody that's listening, we still have ours, and ours do happen in the car like yours, that they take that first step to sit down together and, hey, I want to work on my triggers, and this is where you can come alongside me and begin to take a step there to deal with these. Absolutely.
Love it.
I love you guys. I love what you guys do with exhibition. expedition marriage, not exposition.
Yeah, exhibition.
Well, that's a whole different deal.
Yeah.
Tell people the best ways to find you guys.
All right. You can find us at our website. All of our resources are on there at expeditionmarriage.org. We're pretty big over on Instagram. That's where we show up the most. And that's expedition_marriage. Mm-hmm. And we have the Expedition Marriage podcast. But again, everything is linked right on our website. That's perfect. Go to expeditionmarriage.org and you can find everything. You guys are great. I love being able to work together with you all on things. Love your ministry. And thank you for spending some time this morning. Yes, thank you for having us. We love you right back. Thanks.